We'll just welcome onto the stage Dr. Orna Young from Factcheck NI, Helen Crickard from Reclaim the Agenda, Angela Hutchinson from the Social Change Initiative, Lauren Bond from the Secondary Schools Union, and Danny Shubu from the Votes at 16 campaign. Thank you. Okay. Everyone's getting a very colourful mic. I asked Alan, could I have the pink one, but he told me I had to stick with grey, so we'll see which one everybody goes for. Okay, that's great, thank you. We're going to start maybe just with a few opening remarks about each of the themes. So Orna, I'm going to pick on you and you can start first, okay?
Thanks so much, Amanda. Thanks, folks, for having us this morning. I'm really buoyed to see so many students and young people out looking to discuss democracy. I think it's fantastic. My name's Orna. I work with Factcheck NI. We are the first and only fact-checking service and training service in Northern Ireland. We started in 2015, folks. We grew out of a growing awareness that information and access to good information at that was becoming increasingly tricky, I suppose, with the onset of social media. At that time, it was Facebook, which might seem a bit outdated now. It was ahead of TikTok. It was certainly ahead of Snapchat and things like that. But it had its place and was causing problems in contested urban spaces particularly, so kind of city areas of Derry, Londonderry and Belfast. So we set up and I suppose I should speak directly to the topic of today of democracy. I think I can safely say that 2025 has opened with a bang for us at Factcheck NI. I went into my first week of work hoping to coast a little bit and woke up to a statement from Mark Zuckerberg that he was pulling the third-party fact-checking program and that we were censors as his colleagues working with him on that. And that applies to the American fact-checking community, not to us, even though we continue to remain on that program. But it put in essence to us a thing that a pattern we've noticed for the last number of years, folks, that it is this demonization of facts, the weaponization of facts. So I'm just going to quickly refer to what I think are key threats in terms of our work and what we've been doing, kind of the opportunities and where we can go from there. So in terms of the threats, folks, to democracy, it is bad information is borderless. We saw this with COVID. We saw it with Brexit. It's targeted. It's obviously coordinated in terms of the far right. And I would also emphasize the influence of discourse, so that of Mark Zuckerberg referring to fact checkers as censors and things like that. It's very powerful, folks. It leads to the abuse of the fact-checking community. We've seen, as even in Northern Ireland, an upsurge in that. But what it does most damaging, in a most damaging sense for us, folks, is it creates division. It puts barriers between people. It makes people apathetic. People want to switch off. I always have a barometer. If I, Orna, want to switch off from the news, and I've been immersed in fact-checking political speech for 10 years now, how's a regular person on the street feeling? And also there's a normalization of extremism, folks. We have this thing where language now is being used that would never have been used, certainly not when we were established, not in my youth, and certainly not even in the last 5 years. We're having that normalized. However, there are opportunities. I wouldn't get out of bed every day, folks, if I didn't think there weren't opportunities. I think there's a growing awareness of the problem. I think people are using the language of fact-checking more in a positive light. There's also a sense of accountability. If people are more connected online, they sometimes feel that they're more connected to the political sphere. We're also kind of having to be more adaptable. I think that's a huge opportunity. And what I would say is that I hear a lot about young people, just to say I'm in a safe space here to say this, about how young people need to be educated and that they need to do media literacy. I have trained 7,000 people from about 60 organisations across Northern Ireland. And let me tell you, folks, that young people are the most media literate I come across. That's not the issue. The issue is how we engage with the overwhelm that Tony just referred to, in that we're designed to be, I think I saw a meme on Instagram, we're designed to be in a forest lying on the floor with nuts and berries. We're not designed to be having this overwhelm to our phones. So there's an opportunity to actually engage with people like yourselves and make people aware of how they can think more critically when engaging in that sensory and emotional and mental overload that comes with having a phone in your pocket. And I think I'm going to stop there because I'm realizing I'm going way over my time.
That's great. Thank you, Orna. I know everybody has their own mic. We're okay. The mic's already on, Angela. You're grand.
Thanks very much. Hi, my name's Angela Hodkinson, and I'm from Social Change Initiative. And Tony helpfully introduced a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today, about work that we've been involved in with the World Values Survey. So I suppose just to tell you a little bit about why Social Change Initiative got involved and thought that we wanted to do some work using the World Values Survey. So I think it's really about trying to do something to address the sort of growing polarisation that we see in the world and the kind of binary positions that are being taken on lots of different issues. And there's lots of examples about this that you'll be familiar with, where we really label people and build up a whole stereotype about who we think they are and what they stand for. So we'll be very familiar with that in our own divided history. With Brexit, we saw the whole Labour-Remainer split coming through. With US politics, it's quite extreme in the sort of Democrat-Republican supporters. So where we see people kind of identifying themselves as belonging to one camp or another and really separating from each other and defining themselves into two different groups and developing that kind of us and them mindset. So I think, we do get a lot of American politics and influence here. It's very tempting, I think, to think that things are just as bad here. But I mean, as Tony Gallagher mentioned earlier, things have changed here and have moved on here a lot. But that's not to say that we shouldn't be concerned about the future and about the risks around division. So one approach to trying to address that is to try and build bridges between different communities and trying to help us to understand each other more. And that's why we got involved in doing this work on values. So we think that if we understand people's values and what sort of sits behind different attitudes that people have, that we'll be able to help to kind of move away from some of those polarising ways of looking at the world. So SCI got together with the King's College, London University to work on the World Values Survey, and it's the biggest social survey in the world. It's been going since the 1980s, and about 120 countries take part in it. So it gives you some really sort of deep insights into how values and attitudes have changed in Northern Ireland and how we compare to other countries. So you can kind of look over time and look internationally. So the workshop that I'm doing with Kerry is from Politics in Action, is all about values and attitudes. So we'll tell you more about some of the results from that survey, what it says about how things have changed here. And importantly, what the views of younger people are on sort of democracy, religion, politics, social issues, all of that. Because the views of young people are different to the views of older people in the survey. So we're also going to be looking in the workshop at some population segments that we've developed using the results from the survey. So they're really interesting. We've used the findings to separate people into different groups based on their kind of core political values that they have. So you can take a quiz in the workshop and find out which segment you might belong to and see if you think that that's right. You can sort of understand a bit more. You might be a progressive, you might be a pessimist, you might be a traditionalist. So we have all of these little segments developed. So come along to the workshop, we can dig into that a lot more.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Angela. And next we're going to hear from Helen from Reclaim the Agenda.
Hi everyone. So Reclaim the Agenda is started about 15 years ago, and principally it was about holding space for all of the women's centres and for women to continue to be united. So we started the International Women's Day rallies, and we also do the Reclaim the Night. And that's really important because it's about women being visible and being focal and being seen and being celebrated and acknowledged and recognised for the contribution to society that we make. Our theme this year for International Women's Day is Solidarity Beyond Borders, Women for World Peace. We don't follow the UN theme because sometimes it can be a bit wishy-washy, I think. Like one year it was push for progress and balance for power, and we think, no, we've got to push harder here. So that's principally what we do around that, but we also involved with the project Raise Your Voice Against Sexual Harassment and Sexual Violence, and that was born out of the the well-publicised rugby rape trial in 2019, which is known across the world as the Belfast rape trial. And I think it was through that we realised there was so many things wrong with how the criminal justice system manages crimes of sexual nature, but also how the media report on it, and also all the media frenzy around it, and the lack of understanding around what consent is or what sexual harassment is, particularly in communities, particularly among women's groups. So we developed these workshops to explore that, and also to take people on a journey that they understand sexual harassment has been so normalised in our society that it's something that we really need to pull back from. And I suppose now over the years, we've seen a real increase in the levels of misogyny and racism. Misogyny and racism are best friends. They go hand in hand. And we're coming from a society where we're quite divided already. Sectarianism has been running rife here for years. And I think a lot of that has been stepped over and has been moved into that space of misogyny and racism. So it's about trying to combat that, to give people the tools to understand, to recognise and acknowledge those things. So we see what happens with the new president of the United States. I can't bring myself to mention his name. But he's got the biggest microphone, the biggest amp in the world. So what he says does have an effect on all of us. And we do see here a real rise in racism, a real rise in anti-trans, anti-abortion rights. So all of those things we have to hold on to and continue to be active against. And I think here as well, in terms of our Raise Your Voice against sex harassment, because there's such a void of relationship and sexuality education in schools, nobody's been given the tools to understand or take them on that journey or, you know, explore what it is. So it's so important that we're doing these workshops within community setting, and we also work with the trade union movement. So the trade unions are taking part in all of that as well. So ending violence against women and girls, while we do have a strategy now, there's not very much money been put to it. And I mean, the Irish government, I think they have 22 million for their strategy. I think we have about 5 million. So we have a long way to go. And it sometimes feels like you're 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. But actually, when we look back at where we were even 10 years ago, we've got new laws here on stalking, image-based abuse, coercive control, upskirting. So there's a lot of new stuff that's happened. And I think for us, it's about getting that out into the community so that people understand what it is and can be more aware and have the tools to look after themselves. So our workshop's going to be very interactive. We're going to look at victim blaming as well. We're going to look at how normalised that is, I suppose, around how media report on it, and even ourselves. So it's a good workshop, it's a couple of videos, and you'll all really enjoy it. So please do think about coming along. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Helen. And what Helen is saying, I know Helen very well, and they do great work at Reclaim the Agenda, is the media does have a role in this. Obviously not everybody is wanting to drive sensationalist stories, but I think it's important for journalists and people like me to be constructive in our criticism from the inside of the media, because that obviously improves standards. Next, we're going to hear from Danny Shibu from the Votes at 16 campaign.
Hi everyone, my name is Danny Shibu. I'm a young person, part of the Votes at 16 campaign group here in Northern Ireland. We're about 30 young people wanting to get Votes at 16 in Northern Ireland, because we believe not being able to vote when you're a young person, especially during 16 and 17, is the biggest hindrance for a young person to get into politics, even superficially, because I feel like you're almost told not to, you're waiting until you're 18. Even though our peers in Wales and Scotland have already got it, but why not us? In a country where the saying, it's always has been like this, is normalized, why normalize it? We need to bring change. Our workshop is going to be debating on Votes at 16, whether we should have it or not. And I feel like this is such a great way to talk about the topic, because it lets us young people, regardless of our political beliefs, talk openly without judgment. Also, debate is fundamental in any democratic society. So yeah, come along. Thank you.
Okay, and last but by no means least, Lauren Bond from the Secondary Schools Union of Northern Ireland.
Hiya, so I'm Lauren Bond and I'm the president of the Secondary Students Union Northern Ireland. And what we do is we represent over 50,000 students from across Northern Ireland, and our entire purpose is to make sure that students have a voice about the decisions that impact them. And we do that through our working groups, our reports and our campaigns, and also making sure that when major decisions are made in regards to education, we can gather the views of students and young people and make sure that they're not just consulted, but their views are actually heard and put into practice. And so one of the main things that we really work on is civic education, and we're part of a much wider European network of democratically elected students' unions. And that's something that we've looked at both the European and local level through our Let Us Learn report, which was referenced earlier. And it focuses on LLW and how so many students feel like it's not being taught in schools, and we think that's such a missed opportunity, especially as our entire purpose is to show how democracy can actually be practiced in school and not just taught theoretically. And we do that through like student council resources and stuff like that. And so our workshop focuses a lot on political education and how we can make sure that students feel like they have a voice, because democracy is a two-way street and you don't just lose your power when you vote at the ballot box. You know, you have to make sure you're actively engaged throughout the entire year, throughout the entire process. And so we're going to be looking at how students can use their voice from the grassroots bottom level up. And so, yeah.
Okay, the pink roving mic is over by the wall. Does anybody have any burning thoughts, or anybody wants, oh, there's a yellow mic on the other side of the room as well. Anybody have any thoughts or any questions for anybody that's in the panel? Because I get that you're going to be able to attend 2 of the 5 workshops today, so you may have a question for someone who whose panels you won't be able to attend today. No? Yes, we go. The young person in the middle there.
I just wanted to ask Dr. Young, how do you protect like fact checking without censoring?
That's a great question. How do we protect it without censoring? I think in our practices, we have to prove commitments annually to our transparency, whether that be our methodology, so how we actually go and fact check folks, how we select what we fact checked. We have to show who's funding us, which is a source of great contention. It's the one thing that is levelled at us all the time. And how we do that is by being as transparent as possible. In terms of censoring, you know, the accusation that we had levelled at fact checkers globally of being censors on Facebook was completely unfair, because it undermined the process itself. So we didn't take stuff off Facebook, for example, or we're not removing content from different platforms. We're adding to the info system. So any accusation that we are censors is just not right. It's inaccurate, because we are actually adding information to the realm. In terms of people censoring us, that's really difficult. At the moment, our algorithms are fighting against us left, right and centre. We got a blue tick taken off us on X or Twitter. And we are constantly have to evolve our practices to make sure that our information, which is often about very tricky stuff, folks, the stuff we fact check isn't black and white. Life isn't black and white. And so for that reason, it really puts it up to us and our team to make sure our stuff is as accessible as possible. In that, you know, something, I'm not an expert in everything, you know, there may be a topic you don't know very much about, and we want you as someone coming to our website to be able to come away and read that with ease. So yeah, I think I've answered that on 2 levels. Censorship as in censoring, us being viewed as censors, and then the censoring that's happening to us. And we work with communities. As I said, we go out and train people to be their own fact checkers, and that is a huge component of our part, and which sets us apart as a fact checking organisation globally, I would say.
Thank you, Orna. And I suppose it raises some questions as well about regulation of social media, and also who is a publisher, because in the past it would have just been traditional sort of print outlets and what's described by some people as legacy media, but now everyone can be a publisher, have their own website, have their own social media to put up whatever they want. So I think with the work you're doing at Factcheck NI, you can see what you reflected there about it being grey and not being black and white. So it could be accurate with consideration, because context matters, and that's one of the first things you learn at journalism school. Does anybody else have any questions, maybe from this side of the room, or the gentleman beside the last person there? Yeah. Need to get one of the girls or somebody from the other side of the room as well next.
Hello.
Up the back.
This is a question for the fact check. Pretty much what I want to know is, as you said about weaponizing facts, do you think that the interests of social media owners and their political views, as we know with like Elon Musk, could weaponize fact checkers as well? Could the influence of social media owners and the interests of business change your work? How do you remain partial?
Great question. I get the comment, and we get the comment every single day on I say, it could be a game for us, how regularly we're asked who fact checks the fact checkers. You're absolutely right. There is always a risk of organisations being led by money. That is a really difficult thing to admit. We are a not-for-profit, so in the case of our work, we're a not-for-profit. We are funded by donors and organisations who we will be as transparent as possible about. And because we're not-for-profit, I think we don't take advertising revenue. We're not pay and play. Someone can't pay us. We have been offered money, folks, to go say, could you fact check this? We'll fund it. And we're like, no, we can't do that. And also, we're verified by the International Fact Checking Network, folks. We have to prove that we adhere to transparent methods, that we are basically our quality is that good. Also, we've just recently, she says boasting, been verified by the European Fact Checking Standards Network. Folks, this doesn't come lightly. This verification process is really tricky. It's really hard to get, and we work hard always to be adhering to best practice. We have a rigorous editorial process that goes through at least anything you see online from us goes through at least 3 different people. And we believe in expertise. I meant to say that earlier. It's not me, or it's not like one of my editor or someone else just randomly doing the research. We have a pool of researchers that we call upon to do our work. We don't believe that everybody can be an expert on everything. So that's why we work in the way we do. So yeah, no, it's a really great question. It's something that we grapple with, but I think we've built defensively, is how I'd put it, is in that we built in mind of these things coming to pass. So thanks for the question.
Thank you, Orna. That's great. And obviously, the media is involved in fact checking as our business. And most people who get into journalism or media or fact checking, the pursuit of truth is the reason they get into it in the first place. Now, with any industry, you're going to get people who don't hold up the ethics of the NUJ or don't comply with all of those tough rules and regulations. But I think it becomes obvious to people who trusted sources are, and perhaps around the education piece, around critical thinking and around media literacy, that should be probably added to the curriculum if I could contribute anything. I think we had someone's hand up on the other side of the room. There was just a young person at the back of the room there. Yeah, he's nodding. Give someone pass the mic. Yep.
I've got one here. So this question is for Danny. I was wondering what kind of timetable you envision for passing legislation on votes at 16, because at least from what I know, it's 4 out of 5 major parties support it. Do you see possibly it being blocked by a petition of concern?
That's a great question, thank you. In regards of timetable, we are aiming to get it in before the 2027 election, because we want it to be in place so that people can actually use their right. And in regards of the 4 out of 5 parties, we are trying our best to engage with every single party, to engage with us, to talk about it. And we recently had a motion passed in the Assembly agreeing 4 votes to 16 and calling on Westminster to give us the power. So we hope to see that through before 2027. Thank you.
It does at this point feel like a matter of time, but we can ask the political panel about that later, just about what they're actually doing practically. You were at the front. Do you want to ask a question as well? The mic's going to come to you in a second. I know that you probably don't need a mic, but we'll pass it along anyway.
I'll not ask Orna a question. I'll ask Angela. Angela, I don't know how you're going to answer this. How do we affect social change here where we have what I would call a dysfunctional political structure in which the only core value I can assess is inertia?
So, I mean, I think the political structures that we have do create a lot of issues and barriers. You know, and I guess, you know, people regularly say, well, you know, we voted for the Good Friday Agreement, this is what you get. You know, you get this power sharing agreement and, you know, we're sort of stuck with it. But I mean, probably others in the room will maybe talk more, be able to talk more to the processes and some of the challenges to that and some of the changes that are being suggested around that. I suppose with the work that we're doing, we're trying to kind of look beyond into the wider democratic space, you know, beyond just the power to vote, and into the sort of citizen democracy. You know, how do we, as people kind of talking to each other about our attitudes and values and kind of getting to know, I suppose, what sits behind some of the things that drive attitudes and behaviours of people that we see as other to ourselves. You know, that's a form of democracy in itself and a form of kind of trying to break down some of those barriers and hopefully being able to encourage our politicians to act on some of those things more than they have been doing. I mean, I suppose the politicians in the room might be able to say more about, you know, I suppose what's happening in the Assembly and the decisions that are being made. It certainly seems that progress has been a bit slow since they got back again, but maybe it'll accelerate over the next remainder of the mandate, who knows?
Okay. Any further questions? There's a young guy at the back there. Yep.
Thank you very much. This is just a question for Lauren Bond of the SSUNI. I was just wondering, what does the SSUNI actually do at a local school level in order to represent secondary school students? And like, how would they organise that? How would they organise at a local level?
Yeah, so we have an amazing group of member schools across Northern Ireland. It's free for any school to sign up. And member schools get to nominate 5 delegates per school. So their schools then get to vote on any major decisions that we make in terms of our structure, how we run, what campaigns we're going to focus on, how our groups are formed. But our member schools can also get involved in any single one of our campaign groups. So this year we have 5 main campaign groups focusing on the future of education, mental health, modern languages education. Our Let Us Learn group, they're now forming into a campaign group to actually campaign on the recommendations made within our LW report. And then we also have a mental health collective that are trying to design a kind of set structure on how wellbeing can be integrated into the school environment. But we also help to support our member schools. It's a two-way street. So we get their incredible young people with incredible ideas, but we also help to support what they're doing in their own schools and their student councils. So we have a resource pack on how student councils should actually function so that they're democratically elected and they properly represent the views of young people within their schools. And we've also been organising, we've had certain schools who have come up with their own projects within their individual schools that we've been providing support with, giving them advice on how they can properly set up a campaign. And so, yeah, we're just there to really amplify the voices of students. We take part in consultations. We're really busy at the minute with the curriculum review and all the kind of that's going on. We're making sure that students' voices are represented in that, but mainly through our kind of campaign groups.
Thank you. And also the union's social media is very good and very active because obviously how you present a message in the modern day is important and how you can communicate to wider audiences is important. Okay, we've got time for one more question before I ask a question, and then are you just raising your hands up or yes? No? No, that's not a question. Okay. Yep, one over here.
So my question is for Helen. So in comparison with social media trends like trad wives, how do you feel about the rise in misogyny based on that and the devolving of the women's want to be more progressive?
Thank you. Yeah, there is certainly a rise in social media, and I suppose it comes back to the fact-checking as well. But there's a high level of misogyny coming through there, and a high level of racism coming through, and we've witnessed that over the years with the anti-trans that has been pushing and pushing and pushing. And actually, in Northern Ireland, we're very united in that, in the women's movement, that trans women are women, and we will hold tight to that. It is certainly a challenge, but I think sometimes as well, social media, it has brought a lot of people together. There is some good that comes out of social media. There's some connections that are made there. So it's a space that we can't just walk away from, so we'll have to continue to work in it. And we'll have to continue to be proactive. And I think we can build more on hope and positivity than the negative things that are happening. So that's where we try as much as possible to be sharing positive things and not be resorting to the level that let's face it, that the racists, the fascists, the anti-trans people and that they're working on, which is all on negativity and putting people down. So we have a responsibility ourselves to make sure that we push on positive issues and build hope, because that's where we are. Like, anger is an energy, but it eventually burns out or goes bitter. We've got to build on hope, and there are greater changes. I think Tony alluded to that in the picture 40 years back. And even in politics, we've had, like when the Women's Coalition was first there, they were literally getting, charged in the corridors by the other politicians and told to go back to the kitchen. It's not like that now, but it's still there. So we definitely need more diversity up there. We need more better lived experiences up there that can represent us and think about the people before they think about their political parties.
Thank you.
But great challenges. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that it should be remembered that just because the loudest voices get the most attention doesn't mean that they represent the majority. Most people are sound, most people are dead on, most people are just having crack online. They're not being abusive, but I find the block button very useful. Okay, I'm just going to run up the line with just a quick answer, please, if you can. Obviously, not everyone's going to be able to make it to your workshop. If there's one takeaway from today on your theme, what do you want the opportunity for the young people to grab hold of with regards to your theme? What should they be doing? Orna.
Put on the spot. I think it's taking back the power. We all have power to think more critically online, and it's to, I suppose, negate that sense of overwhelm we all feel, that sense of hopelessness that we've just been talking about. Taking back the power, using your critical thinking skills, and just ending the overwhelm.
Okay, and Angela?
I think maybe just stop and think. Might be something, that not to react instantly. I think we can have gut reactions to people and, based on stereotypes and different views that we have of them. And we may not agree with them, we may violently disagree with them, but let's just stop and think and then react.
Thank you. Helen?
It's a great question. I think we're stronger than we think, and unity is not easy to hold, but it's about having respect for difference, appreciating difference, and recognizing that that's some of the strength is being recognizing all of the different viewpoints that are there. That's a superpower, being able to do that, and I think that's the power you have. Use are the next generation that are going to change it. Nothing has ever been given to us. We've fought for it all, and it's up to us to create the change. So it's within your gift. I think you are well able for it.
Okay, and Danny?
Ask for your right. Our local representatives, MLAs and MPs are there to represent you. So write to them, corner them, go to their office, ask for your right, because they're not there they're elected by us, their constituents. So there's no point in them being overly into party politics when they have to also listen to you.
And final, Lauren.
Use your voice. The beauty of democracy is that it's meant to be reflective of the people that power it. And so it's really important that the more engaged we are and the louder we are, that our views will be represented in society.
Okay, that's great. If everybody would just like to thank our panel. Thank you. Stay there for a second.